Our home is the third planet from the Sun. It's the only planet known to have an atmosphere containing free oxygen, oceans of water on its surface, and of course, life. And here we exist. We divided this Earth into 7 continents and 195 countries. We share this planet, our living world, with almost 8 billion people and million kinds of other species. Do we all have equal rights to this planet? Do we belong to this home equally? Perhaps not. Our civilization witnessed 2 world wars. We are now planning and working to save the world from global warming, but at the same time, we are making threats of nuclear war to protect our individual interests. Discrimination and misconduct are being practiced in different parts of the world in the name of nationality, religion, race, caste, and creed, and sometimes in the name of ethnicity. Here is one of the most horrific and alarming human rights violations perpetrated on one of the most persecuted minorities, the Rohingyas, by Myanmar in the name of ethnic cleansing. According to Human Rights Watch, since late August 2017, more than 700,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled Myanmar's Rakhine state to escape the military's large-scale campaign of ethnic cleansing. The atrocities committed by Myanmar security forces, including mass killings, sexual violence, and widespread arson, amount to crimes against humanity. Military and civilian officials have repeatedly denied that security forces committed abuses during the operations, claims which are contradicted by extensive evidences and witness accounts. The Rohingya have faced decades of discrimination and repression under successive Myanmar governments, effectively denied citizenship under the 1982 citizenship law. They are one of the largest stateless populations